What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, February 2nd, 2018. And we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone and put you on the air with your comments and questions. And yes, the lovely Lady Claire will be joining us in hour number 3. So let's get right on into it. Bad day on the stock market. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is off almost 700 points. It's at 683 right now. It's just been going down all day long. And that is so contrary to the normal expectation because the plunge protection team likes to massage the stock market, especially on a Friday, so it has a happy ending, so the investors can all have a nice relaxing weekend thinking everything is all hunky-dory. But it's been a real roller coaster for this week. And all I can say is it's a good thing those buildings on Wall Street don't have windows that open, or it would be raining brokers all over the sidewalk right about now. It's also today Groundhog Day, and Punxsutawney Phil hath come on out and decreed we will have 6 more weeks of winter. It's a charming little custom here, and I'd like to remind everybody that the same people holding up that groundhog as an authority on weather are the same people who keep insisting that you humans are warming planet Earth. Now, obviously, the big news is that the FISA memo has finally been released. They're already out there trying to rename it to blunt the impact. It's the Nunes memo. They're trying to make it look like it's just him. Or the GOP memo, it's just the Republicans. And the corporate media and the Democrats and the FBI, they're all trying to find some way they can blunt the impact. But the impact is definitely going to be there. Now, for those of you who listen to this radio show and who read my website, we had pretty much worked all of this out already. So a lot of people can be forgiven for reading this and saying, well, we already knew this. Yeah, we did. But see, here's the important part you need to keep in mind. Now we have the U.S. House of Representatives Intelligence Oversight Committee acknowledging that the independent media got it right. And the corporate media was covering it all up. So that's an important watershed moment in terms of public discourse, in terms of the role of the independent media in this country. That's an important moment when the government comes on out and says, you know, those people over there, they were making sense over there at Republic Broadcasting and whatreallyhappened.com. So that there is an important moment. Now, I've gotten a lot of comments from people saying, well, where's the smoking gun that's going to bring down Hillary Clinton? And you need to remember, this is just the start. And I know you can watch a movie like All the President's Men, and it goes from the beginning break-in to Nixon resigning in 90 minutes. That's not the real world. Sometimes movies give us an unrealistic expectation of things that are going to happen and how long it will take. If you go back and study the history of Watergate, what we just had today was the equivalent of the police arresting the burglars at the Watergate Hotel. It's the beginning of the process. And look how long it took to get from the Watergate Hotel break-in to Nixon resigning. It didn't happen quickly. And this won't happen quickly either, but this is the beginning. So, and as I said before, this is turning out to be the Democrats' version of the Watergate scandal. And basically it says the FBI was exceeding its authority, spying on a political enemy of the sitting president. And the memo goes into a lot of details about it, and it is an embarrassment to the Democrats because this is all coming from the Obama White House. It's certainly an embarrassment to the FBI, which doesn't want another COINTELPRO scandal to deal with. It's an embarrassment to the FISA court, but they're victims. They didn't know what was going on. They're acknowledging that if they had not had that ginned up phony Russian dossier from Christopher Steele, the FBI would not have even gone to the FISA court trying to get a warrant. The entire FISA warrant was based on that bogus dossier. They lied to the judges. That's what they did. The warrant was issued on bogus information, And that may be good news for Michael Flynn. More about that in a little tiny bit. So basically, we have secret surveillance by the FBI and Justice Department, supposedly in accord with this Trump-Russia investigation, which has gone nowhere. But obviously, during an election season, during a campaign, there's an issue there. What intelligence was being gleaned to help Hillary Clinton defeat Donald Trump? Now, Andrew McCabe is the one who's out there admitting no FISA warrant would have even been sought without the Steele dossier. And here's the interesting part. The political dimensions of the Steele dossier were known to senior Department of Justice and FBI officials. They knew the Democrats had funded it. They knew Fusion GPS had been the channel to get Christopher Steele. They knew that Christopher Steele himself was very biased against Donald Trump. He actually said to them, he was actually desperate that Donald Trump not get elected president. And the Department of Justice and FBI officials knew this, but excluded it from the FISA application. They told the FISA judges that this was completely objective, unbiased reporting on Donald Trump in Moscow. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. But to sum it all up, basically, the FISA memo shows that this phony Steele dossier was created to open up a quasi-legal means to spy on the Trump campaign. It was the pretext to spy on members of Donald Trump's presidential campaign. So that's what's going on. It's basically, again, this is the Democrats' version of the Watergate scandal. So the deep state and the Democrats are out there reacting. Everybody's reacting. Everybody's got an opinion. I'm sure you've got an opinion out there too. But apparently the Democrats and the media are out there saying, oh, the memo's a nothing burger. It's going to backfire on the White House. But Trump better not mess with the FBI. Sounds like a threat. That to me sounds like threatening the President of the United States of America, which is a crime. Now, one of the other issues that came on out from this memo was that Steele was leaking this information, and he leaked it to Mother Jones, and he leaked it to a writer over at Yahoo News, and then turned around and claimed that the story, when it appeared in the Yahoo News, corroborated his dossier, which obviously it didn't, and the House Intelligence Committee said, yeah, the Yahoo article is not a corroboration because it came from the same source, Christopher Steele. So this is amazing, and I understand the desperations of the Democrats. I understand the desperation of the FBI, Department of Justice, and the corporate media, because they're all players. The corporate media was going along with this. This is as dirty as politics get, because they got to protect the Democrats. You can pretty much rest assured, if this had been a Republican president doing this to a Democrat, as it was under Nixon, the media would have been all over it, the way the Washington Post brought Nixon down. But no, these are Democrats. We can't let them be harmed. They're the future of the world. They're part of the New World Order and the globalists. Now, the author of the article at Yahoo that had information leaked to him by Christopher Steele, turns out at the time he was also writing for Yahoo, was also working for Fusion GPS. It's this little incestuous group of people. They were all in on it. And it's all coming out. So, question. Has the memo, I assume by now the memo has been read by the judges on the FISA court. And it looks to me like the FISA judge was misled and duped. And what actions can the judge take? Can he rescind the warrant? Wouldn't make any difference now, but it would be a symbolic gesture. He could declare the warrant retroactively invalid And that will have ramifications for Robert Mueller's investigation. It's all going to go up in smoke. Congressman Jeff Duncan is saying this memo will shake the FBI to its core. He's saying basically the FBI was weaponized by Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration to spy on the Trump campaign. There it is, the Democratic version of Watergate. There is a unsubstantiated rumor floating around that current FBI Director Christopher Wray may resign over this memo. Good start. I think the whole upper echelon of the FBI needs to be replaced. We can't stand for this blatant violation of the Constitution and due process. Now, Trey Gowdy is out there saying that Adam Schiff, in his many efforts trying to block Congress from releasing the memo or block the courts from releasing data on Fusion GPS, amounts to obstruction of justice, which is an impeachable offense. Impeachment can be applied to congressmen and judges, not just the president here. And yeah, I think everybody who was trying to block the release of the memo or claim that it's all lies, technically it's all obstruction of justice. Now, CNN political analyst Brian Karem is out there asking if America can even survive the release of the memo. Are we going to be a democracy after today? Well, Brian is a little off mark here because technically we're a republic with a democratically elected leadership, or at least that's what we're supposed to be. Personally, I think we've been a democracy for a long time, as evidenced by the fact that our elections are just a joke and subject to massive, massive fraud. Now, Clapper has had a slip of the tongue saying that the Steele dossier was used to extend FISA surveillance. And again, as we reported the other day, it was finally come on out. Surveillance of Donald Trump began the day he won the GOP nomination. And they didn't have the Russia collusion situation. They were just spying on him. The Obama administration was using the intelligence agencies to spy on Donald Trump to aid Hillary Clinton. It is Watergate all over again. Tom Fitton is out there saying that the Nunes report strikes a devastating blow to Mueller's Russia investigation. Yes, it does. Everything in it is now tainted. It's all tainted information. It's based on a warrant that was acquired with fraudulent data. And the defenders of the orthodoxy are still out there trying to find some way to get everybody not to pay attention to this. And the fact that it was released on the Friday before Super Bowl should give them some comfort. But it won't, because we're going to come right back to it on Monday's show. The FBI, which the other day was out there saying this is going to be a devastating blow to national security and everybody's name should be redacted. And now they're saying, well, the release of this memo undermines faith in the noble institution of the FBI. Well, my response to that was to repost my article on COINTELPRO, which was a major scandal involving the FBI back in the 1960s. And some very brave individuals broke into an FBI field office and copied off all the files of COINTELPRO and made it public. And the American people's outrage was so great, Congress was forced to hold hearings and to pass laws that would rein in an obviously then out of control FBI. And now we have evidence the FBI is out of control yet again. So you might want to take a look at that COINTELPRO article, because the public should never trust or have faith in the FBI or any other institution of government. Why? Because it is the government. And it is the curse of political power that it attracts the very sort of people who should never be allowed to have it. Now, over at MSNBC, John Heilemann is now accusing Paul Ryan of being on Team Russia. See, here's the new spin. It's all a Russian plot. The FBI are a bunch of really nice people. The girls all look like Jodie Foster, for heck's sake. So it's all a Russian plot. And even McCain is out there saying this is a Russian plot. You know, Nunes is, and these people on the House Intelligence Committee, they're working for Russia. They're trying to destroy the American people's trust in the government. Actually, the government's been doing a really good job of that themselves. Maxine Waters, never one to be upstaged, is out there now saying that Russia is out to get her. There's a Russian behind every mailbox and every lamppost. There are Russians under her bed. They're in her closet. I think we need to maybe think about competency tests for members of Congress from now on. And the Democrats, I don't know if they understand the optics of this. They're just making themselves look bad. And there was this interesting article over at My Catbird Seat by Mike Whitney, The Loser Democrats. And he's basically saying that anybody who is a true political progressive, you might as well start looking someplace else other than the Democratic Party. They don't have any ideas. They've become obsessed with everything as a Russian plot and stealing elections and clinging on to power. And they're absolutely broke. And the good news is the polls are turning against them as we edge closer to those midterms. The Democrats' chances of capturing Congress are beginning to evaporate. And the more they scream Russia this and Russia that and Trump is evil and Trump is bad, instead of actually doing something about helping their constituents, the worse it's going to get. Now, remember James Comey, former FBI director and admitted document leaker. Remember, he leaked documents classified to this university professor who then in turn passed them on the media, is out there screaming about the weasels and liars over at the House Intelligence Committee. Not really making a lot of sense in his tweet. All right, I can see we've got some callers waiting on the line. We're going to start with Steve Elkins. Aloha, Steve. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I agree with you. I think maybe Christopher Wray may step down from the FBI, but if he does not, I think it's justified for Donald Trump to say, because he's trying to block the release of this memo. He tried very hard, didn't work. He evidently does not want to do his job in the FBI, so I think he has grounds to actually replace him also, just as he did James Comey. But in this memo, as I understand, I haven't seen it yet, and I'm looking forward to reading it, but the trail of money hired to do all this came from the Hillary Clinton camp, I understand. Is that true?
Yes, that's true. That's true. The memo does. I mean, I've already got a copy of the memo, and I've already been through it. And yeah, it basically makes that financial connection that the Russian dossier was funded by the Democratic National Committee, the Hillary Clinton campaign, and some additional money from the FBI itself.
Right. Well, you have perfect grounds to end this nonsense, this witch hunt, right off the bat. You have everything all coming together to say we need to stop this now, as far as I'm concerned.
I absolutely agree. And again, we're waiting to see what the reaction of the FISA court itself is going to be, because if they declare the warrant invalid because it was secured with fraudulent information, then every piece of evidence that Robert Mueller has is no longer admissible in a court of law. The case just evaporated.
Right. Now, does the memo itself have actual names?
Yeah, all the names are still in there. All the names are still in there. And by the way, there is a link on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com that will take you to read the memo yourself. And it's very concise. It's pretty straightforward. Steve, I'm going to have to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials. I'll come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And for those of you who want to help keep Republic Broadcasting on the air, the postal address to send a check or money order is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number, if you want to pledge to becoming a recurring subscriber, is 800-724-2719, extension 03. And as I've said many times before, we really do need your help. We wouldn't ask if we didn't. There have been some setbacks. WhatReallyHappened.com just lost one of its largest advertisers. They were literally threatened to stop doing business with us. And there are other glitches in the system as well. So right now, we really need your help. As you can tell, we've hit this watershed moment of the FISA memo. And we're ready to take off and really press forward to getting to the heart of the corruption in our country. We need your help to do it. The bad guys, they've got lots and lots of money to use. We don't. And so we really do need your help. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to get on back to Steve Elkins. And Steve, please just continue where you left off.
Well, you know, this memo here, it's funny how many people were trying to block the release of this memo. And now that the memo's coming out, they're going to try very hard. They were trying to block it because they know the truth of the memo. Now they're going to work really, really hard to basically say it's not a valid document, discredit the document. It's funny, they go to the extreme to say, no, we can't release this. We can't release this. Of course, they always want to use in the interest of national security, which, it shows the bad apples in your administration. Other than that, it doesn't threaten the safety of our nation. It shows that you have some bad apples in your administration. But they're going to try very hard. They tried very hard to block the release. Now they're going to try very hard to discredit the document, saying it's not true. None of it's true. It's funny. It's the wishy-washiness of these people. You know, when it doesn't work their way, they'll try to find another angle to actually now to discredit the document. But you know, it's perfect timing right now. I mean, the document's valid. I'm sure it is. That's why they try to block it. But now is the perfect timing is actually to dismantle and rebuild this agency and give them the mission statement where their power lies, and not to exceed this power. We need to shape them up, basically, and reorganize and say, here's your mission statement, and anything beyond that is an abuse of power. It shows that the FBI played partisan politics, and Hillary and Obama, and maybe even George Soros was part of it, but their goal was to derail the Trump campaign. They got caught.
Yes. They absolutely did, and it's out there now, and they're going to have a tough time discrediting the document simply because, I mean, there is supporting evidence behind everything in there. It is issued by the United States Congress. This is an official congressional memo. It's not like it's coming from the Midnight Sun or something like that, and that's why this is so important, because we've had this stuff out on Republic Broadcasting and WhatReallyHappened.com and Michael Herzog's show and everything, and your show, for a long time. And the establishment media was, well, they're just conspiracy wackos. And now all of a sudden we have the U.S. government verifying we had pretty much worked this out correctly. And that's why this is such an important moment. But again, this is just the beginning of what's going to be a very long and rancorous process. But I don't know about you. I can just see the desperation in the faces of all those Democrats, because along with being broke, along with carrying the stain of Hillary, this scandal is going to play out over this year. And if Trump is smart, he's going to let this go into the autumn in order to have the maximum impact on the midterm elections.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, you know, I agree with that other caller saying about, you know, democracy. You know, yes, we don't really live in a democracy, a constitutional republic, which is not really abiding by the Constitution anymore. But, you know, I mean, we believed at one time that the FBI and the CIA and these agencies were all there, and they're good guys, and they're the good guys are all working for us in our favor. But, you know, showing that they played partisan politics here in the FBI, and that they actually did, you know, they went into their office and they went over their power of what they were supposed to be doing. I say this is perfect timing. Perfect time to dismantle, throw out, to fire, and you have just cause to do so and try to reestablish an agency here and with a mission statement and never to go beyond their powers. I think it's good timing.
Well, intelligence agencies are always dangerous things to have, and we've got way too many of them. But again, the president, as the chief executive, and the FBI and the Department of Justice are part of the executive branch, he can fire anybody he wants anytime he wants. Now, obviously, the Democrats and the corporate media are going to scream bloody murder, that it's all about blocking the Russia investigation. But frankly, with the revelation that the entire FISA warrant was based on this bogus manufactured dossier, the FISA court may declare the warrant invalid, and that will be the end of the entire case. Because somebody's going to say to Robert Mueller, it's time to show down your cards. Okay, after a year and $10 million, do you actually have any evidence or not? And don't give me this, we know he did it, but we can't tell you how we know because it's national security. Anyway, Stephen, thank you very much for the call. We got to let you go and take another break for commercials. We'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We have a breaking news story here. Police have found the FISA memo in Fort Marcy Park, nailed to a tree and shot twice in the header. The FBI has declared it an obvious suicide and ordered the remains to be immediately cremated. Okay, we're going to go back to the phone calls now. Al in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. That was beautiful. I read the FISA memo. It was posted on CBC, and they've taken it down. But I just want to go through it really quickly to make sure that I have it right in my mind. So you have Clinton campaign, the DNC, and some other people, the FBI, funding this dossier that Christopher Steele came up, and it was funded through GPS Fusion, right?
Yes, Fusion GPS.
And Steele's wife worked at GPS Fusion, or Fusion GPS.
Yes.
Okay, and then you have the FBI investigators. Okay, so anyways, this is quote unquote this dossier that Steele came up with, and then so you have the FBI who I guess goes through David Rosenstein. They want to put a wiretap on Carter Page, right? Who
yes.
was the Trump campaign advisor. And then you have Rodenstein also is supervising the Robert Mueller investigation.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought it was all about. And, well, obviously, this is as crooked as a dog's hind leg. I mean,
oh, it absolutely is. And this is only the beginning here because you have these people taking what they knew was a politically motivated piece of writing to the FISA court to get the warrant. And it was specifically on Carter Page on this idea that Trump was somehow being blackmailed by Russia. Well, if the dossier is discredited, then that whole case is gone. And the probable cause to be spying on an American citizen goes out the window. But it wasn't just Carter Page. There's a loophole in the FISA law that basically says, you're not just going to record one side of a conversation. Any communication Carter Page had with anybody, those other parties were also being spied on. So we're probably talking actually a widely cast net that took in hundreds of people.
Yeah, but also apparently this application was reapplied for through Rosenstein.
Well, it was several people took part in it because a FISA warrant is not open-ended. It has to be basically renewed every so often. Basically, a FISA has to be renewed every 90 days, and each renewal requires a separate finding of probable cause. Then Director James Comey signed 3 of these FISA applications on behalf of the FBI, and Deputy Director Andrew McCabe signed 1. Then Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, and then Acting Deputy Attorney General Dana Bonte, and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein each signed 1 or more. So they were all basically signing these applications and saying, we have this dossier, the Russians are blackmailing Trump, we need to basically continue to spy on him.
And Putin is laughing his butt off.
Well, I imagine that he probably is.
Oh, my God.
but it's very serious because we've
get him
got
on your
everybody.
show.
Everybody is, yeah, I'm sure I can get Putin on my show. Everybody
There you
is scapegoating Russia, and right now we face a very real possibility that the deep state, the intelligence agencies, are going to do something really dramatic and desperate to take everybody's mind off of this. And of course, we've got the Super Bowl coming up this weekend, and very obviously machinations leading toward war. We could see some kind of a false flag to basically get a shooting war going. And the message we'll get from the corporate media is, look, we're in a real war now. You can't be concerned about these little tiny infractions of the law by the FBI. We need those agents out there to hunt down the Russian spies in our midst, blah, 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 blah.
It won't fly. I can't see something like that ever flying. I mean,
it'll fly with that
this is in
segment of the population
1963.
that doesn't know how to use a computer.
Or they're not very bright.
That too.
Or they're diehard liberals.
Yes.
Like when I was younger, I used to be a liberal, but then, I realized that, what are you doing with my money? I'm not happy with this, and I have no choice but to give it to them. Anyway, Mike, you were spot on the whole time.
Thank you.
You're great. You're great. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Mike.
And humble. Don't forget humble. I have more humble than any 12 other men you're ever going to meet. Thank you very much for the phone call, Al. We're going to switch on over to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Hey, you know what? It's not like this is new stuff. You've been saying this for months. Sean Hannity's been saying it for months.
Yes.
It's been out there for months. And the mainstream corporate media, has purposely, part of the problem, looked away. They have drumbeat for this whole thing, showing just how under control of the national security establishment, the CIA, the FBI, that they really are, and how partisan they really are. But they've been doing it for months. And Mike, talking about the war you're talking about, it has made it impossible for Trump to treat with the Russians, the only country in the world that can wipe out the world completely along with ourselves. The only one that we absolutely have to get along with. And yet they've made it impossible to do that. Lives are going to be lost because of that.
Yes.
We are deeper into Syria because of that. And then you look back and say again, not only was this all these people, Comey and Mueller and Rosenstein and all these other guys, all Obama appointees. The DNC, who, where Hillary may have controlled most of a lot of it, Obama was still the titular head of the Democratic Party. And none of these guys, for these FISA warrants, was in the FBI. All Obama appointees were about to go and surveil a presidential candidate in a presidential election without the absolute assurance that they had and the go-ahead from Obama. It rests with him. All his appointees, his appointee Hillary, it's all Obama. And at what point, I hope to God that it comes out, and I hope you're right that they play this out through the election. And you know what? Soros is in there too, because as soon as the election ended, and by the way, you remember that right about a week or 10 days before the election, Obama was in some town hall or meet the candidate, whatever kind of thing, and he was saying that Trump, he said this on the air, Trump would never be president. You remember that?
I remember that. I remember all the people who were out there saying Trump will never be president, and they were selling that message. But you know that Obama actually has an office in Washington, D.C., and it's like only a couple of blocks away from the White House. So he's basically still in Washington, D.C., running his own little parallel government, which unfortunately includes a lot of the staffers inside the Trump White House. So this memo is just the very, very beginning. And yes, we all knew this stuff was going on, but this represents an official acknowledgement where the government is now saying, yeah, this actually was going on. And this is going to be the beginning of a huge unraveling, and it is going to take a time. We're going to be dealing with more revelations right up until the midterm elections.
Mike, when as soon as the election was lost and Hillary couldn't come out that day, and when she came out finally, she was wearing the purple. And by that time, the Soros groups, the paid-for Soros groups, were already out there, basically rioting and demonstrating, violently demonstrating all over the country. That Soros, one of her main campaign donors, and one of the main campaign donors to the Democratic Party. And violent demonstrations all over the country for months.
Yes.
Again, all this happened. Obama then and his administration reauthorized the FISA memos while Trump was president-elect. And knowing, and they all knew that it was based on a crap made up, paid for by Hillary Clinton, which means also by Obama too, really. The fusion GPS thing.
Yes.
And then when you contrast that, Mike, with what they did not do with the Hillary investigation, they didn't even put her under oath.
Yes.
They didn't get her server. They didn't do any of that. They immunized everybody who could rat her out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we know that, again, this protection of Hillary's email server scandal was done not just to protect Hillary Clinton, but Obama himself. Now, remember when he came out on TV when the email server scandal first broke, and he said, "First I've heard of it. It was on the news last night. I had no idea Hillary Clinton was operating a server outside the government secure system." Then it's come out more recently that Barack Obama was communicating with Hillary using her private email server and included classified documents. And so that's why everybody was told to just make this go away, because Hillary is open to Title 18 prosecution, so is Obama. And I don't know what the statute of limitations are for Title 18, but I can imagine it's not short. But yeah, and it's a big stinking pile of poo.
And Mike, Susan Rice and others were doing all that unmasking, which has gone away also.
Yes.
And that needs to be resurrected. All these people were Obama's right-hand people.
Yes.
This guy he is poison. But, and he's laid to all these bombshells. There's nothing think of what might have been accomplished in the last year if all this bullcrap wasn't going on, and all that can be laid to his absolutely egomaniacal feet.
Well, he's definitely a figurehead, but he didn't do it all by himself. He had the FBI to help him, and again, Obama is technically out of office. He doesn't have any legal authority, but still, the FBI, CIA, NSA are still trying to help him. And that's what we mean by the deep state corruption. They're all tangled up in this web of corruption, which includes the CIA gun and drug running out of Arkansas. It includes all kinds of wet work, Vince Foster, Seth Rich. It involves the Clinton Foundation, which everybody in the Beltway was dipping into one way or the other. The Uranium One deal, a lot of people got a little taste of that one. Now we've got this new scandal emerging where they basically have leased this gigantic container shipping terminal down in Florida to this Iraqi individual who was supposedly part of Saddam Hussein's development program for weapons of mass destruction. And again, the money, the pay-for-play just pours on in. And yeah, we need to dig this all out, and we need to put it before the American people.
Well, you remember also a week before he left office, Obama changed the way intelligence was shared and made it so that they could share intelligence amongst all the 16 or 17 of the known intelligence agencies. And so making all these leaks and lies and disinformation, things like the dossier, able to be shared amongst other people and then leaked to the press from them.
Yes.
So he widened the area that this could be released, and he did that on purpose again. I'm telling you that all this, the Soros, the FISA, all this was plotted and planned and could not have been carried out without the chief executive being absolutely behind it.
I agree. I absolutely agree. But he's not the sole player. He was working in concert with Hillary. He's working in concert with the Central Intelligence Agency. Remember, they've got a lot to lose. They're just as scared of public exposure as the FBI is. And so they're all circling the wagons. And they see all of us out here in the rest of America. We're the engines. You know, we've got our bows and arrows and our feathers on and everything. And Washington, D.C. is circling the wagons to hold us all off. Anyway, Peter, thank you for the information. I need to let you go. The phone lines are loaded up, and I want to give everybody a turn here. So let's switch over to Nathan in Northern California. Aloha, Nathan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Michael. Thank you for taking my call. I'll try to make this real quick for you. I was watching Dick Morris about 4 to 6 weeks ago, and he proposed a pretty good question. It was only one sentence, but he said, "Is Fusion GPS CIA?" And he was, meaning is it a front company like Air America and CT Maine that John Perkins worked for?
Could very well be.
And yeah, well, Perkins said, if someone gets caught, I got it written here, they can't be traced, to the government or the CIA. And we all know that Perkins went down and, did some pretty nasty work in South America, threatening, these leaders' lives. And so I really think that, Dick Morris might be right on the money with that. I bet you Fusion GPS is in fact CIA. People don't know this, but they were investigating Romney in 2012, and they were also involved, according to Hagman and Hagman, a lot of people that in Fusion GPS they were investigating the birth certificate thing with Joe Arpaio.
Okay.
And so I'm really thinking that it's not just the FBI and the Justice Department. It's the FBI, it's the CIA,
yes.
It's the NSA. Obama has had everything weaponized. And are we going to find out if Fusion GPS is CIA? Well, that's classified. And, I don't trust Congress to get to the bottom of anything.
Well, no, that's why we have to get to the bottom of it. We're ahead of the curve. Congress just caught up with us is basically what happened. Anyway, listen, Nathan, I'm going to hold you over the commercial break.
Michael.
So don't hang up. We got to take a break for some commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here, and we're talking with Nathan in Northern California. And the reality is that the CIA does have a huge number of front companies, and some of them are used to carry out covert actions, like Brewster, Jennings and Associates, which was outed and destroyed along with Valerie Plame. And a lot of the CIA front companies are cutouts. In order to give the CIA plausible deniability in certain issues. Now, we know the CIA has been running their own drug cartel going back at least as far as Vietnam, and I think it's safe to assume that they're not just putting all that money in their own pockets, although they're putting some of it. But a good example, when they were smuggling cocaine into Arkansas, yes, they put some of it in their pockets, but most of it was being spent to build these weapons that were being sent back down to Nicaragua. So in all the years since, again, Vietnam, it may be assumed that the CIA has plowed much of that drug cash into other front companies that even Congress will have no idea are front companies. So we really can't know. But Fusion GPS could very easily be a CIA front company that is tasked to carry out dirty work. It purports to be an opposition research company, but very obviously with the discrediting of Christopher Steele's dossier, it's there just to create plausible propaganda.
Well, I think you're right, Michael. And, I think Dick Morris was spot on when he asked that question. And the documentary I saw on Air America they basically said at one time when they were operating in Southeast Asia, only about 12 people knew that Air America was CIA.
Yes.
It was just incredible. And I don't blame Fusion GPS for not wanting to show their bank records, because at the same time with this other complaint, maybe those bank records can be traced to, government payments, to the operation to support it. I don't know how it was functioning, whether it was profitable or not.
Well,
But
they might have been
I really
getting their
do
funding
believe
through
that-
another cutout company. There could be cutout after cutout after cutout. It depends on how sensitive the operation is.
Yeah, and probably would take a lot of patience and work to, get through the mess. But I really think Fusion GPS is probably CIA. I thought Dick Morris hit the nail on the head, and thank you very much for your comments. I appreciate it, and I hope maybe, just maybe, you might get lucky and crack the nut on that problem.
Well, it's certainly something that I and probably a lot of other people are going to be looking into in the very near future. So, Nathan, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go.
Michael.
We're going to start with Dustin in New Jersey. Dustin, I'm going to have to take you through the identification break. But what is on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. How you doing?
Doing okay.
Your listeners are right on in a lot of spots, but
Oh, actually,
I'll
there's
wait.
the music. Dustin, there's the music. We're going to do the break. When we come on back, you'll just start fresh, okay? We'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2, and we're going to go right back to the phones. And Dustin in New Jersey, take it away, Dustin.
yeah, I mean, every listener was right on 99%, but they're missing the fact. This is beyond Obama. Obama's involved because he's part of that integral into that machine. This is a machine that goes back. I was born in 1970. This goes back before 1970.
Yes.
Before that, this is about a machine of corruption, lies, murderers, and crooks and deceivers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a systemic problem, and arguing over whose neck deserves the shortest rope and the tallest tree is an absolute waste of time. The entire system has become corrupt.
Yeah, I mean, the memo, Mike, I don't know what you take the stock market today. Like, is this linked to the release of the memo? Like, it's bizarre. I mean, the whole thing is
I think it may be people profit taking. I think they're getting spooked. Everybody's been talking about the market's at its peak. A correction is due. We had that dip earlier in the week, and I think probably people just decided they were going to maybe get their cash out. We'll see what happens to the stock market on Monday, but it is the worst 2 weeks in the stock market for quite a long time here.
At this particular moment, though, in the last couple of days, that's the thing, right?
Yes.
At this particular moment in time, it's the worst. And, like I said, I still don't believe in the unemployment rate for blacks, whites, Asians, Hispanics, or the purple man on the moon. It's all rigged numbers to favor one person or another's oligarchy. You
Yes.
know? But, oh, my God, Mike, was it Super Bowl Sunday? I don't know. I don't watch football, but, hey, can Trump break into, like, the main screen TV, like, on your TV? And he needs to do an address to the American people about this, Mike. Like, he controls the FCC, doesn't he? Like,
Well,
he can
in
break
theory,
into the television
yes.
show anytime he wants.
Well, in theory, yes. Basically, the White House will request broadcast time, and the networks traditionally agree, but he can't actually force them to carry a broadcast. And there have been a couple of times when presidential addresses are only carried on 1 or 2 networks instead of all of them. What's really interesting is that apparently Donald Trump was scheduled to do a pre-game interview at the Super Bowl, which is something other presidents have done to just sort of help build the audience. And Trump has said, no, he doesn't want to do that. And the NFL is out there trying to rah-rah people to tune into the game because it's looking like it's not going to have the audience it's had in the past. The NFL is out there saying that the NFL's declining TV ratings have got nothing to do with the kneeling scandal. Nobody's going to buy that one at all. We may be seeing basically American-style football starting to wane, and we may just move over to the rest of the world and consider that soccer is the new football. That's what they call it in other countries, by the way.
This is a national security problem because we've become destabilized. Like, this is like a threat to what we used to be a republic / empire now. But I mean, this is a serious threat to what's going on, because you're looking at, see, Mike, what these people lost track with is it's a digital age now. It's harder to hide stuff now. I mean, there's always going to be a copy somewhere, even if you use BleachBit. Like,
yes.
How do you BleachBit? You can BleachBit your hard drive, but the NSA, don't they have a copy of everything you say, hear, do, whenever you type on your keyboard?
In theory, yes, and they even have a copy of all of Hillary's missing emails, but apparently former FBI Director James Comey didn't want to see them.
And what's up with Adam Shifty Shift? Like, why is he so scared? Not that he's a Democrat, but who is he? What's his background? Because he seems like he's really scared for this of the memo being released. Like, is he part of that? He's part of that deep state, obviously, but is he being black? See, that's the thing. Is he being blackmailed, or any of these people being blackmailed?
To some extent, I would say yes on all of them, almost all of them, to one way or the other. But there's another thing to keep in mind, and that is the Democrats have basically bet the farm on recapturing Congress this November. And if this scandal really blows up, it is going to cost them that opportunity. They really don't have a lot of money. There may be a move for voter ID between now and November. And all they had to run on this year was Trump, Russia, and that's about to blow up in their face. And so probably every Democrat is out there attacking this memo and trying to make it all go away, simply out of concern that they may not survive their next election.
And the thing is, Mike, I know you talked about this. Everybody talks about, like, just term limits. 1 to 2 year term limits. I'd say 1 year, because it's harder to lock your hands around somebody for up to a year. And they got to change hands again. So it's not like they're a rotting corpse of 30 years worth of rot. You know what I mean? From Washington D.C. So you need to up to 1 year. The people need to have new blood every year. That's it, because it's harder just to lock down somebody, like up to a year. I mean, it might take a couple of years to lock somebody down. So, but after a amount of time, you'll have all new blood every year, basically, or every 2 years. So it's harder for them to either bribe somebody, blackmail.
Well, there's a problem with that.
Obviously,
there's a problem with that, and that is that first of all, people can take bribes in that 1 year. There's no reason for them not to, outside of the fact that it's illegal. But it may be, look at the way candidates are vetted by the party. And they may want to go with a candidate who's done something before they even got into politics, with which they can be blackmailed. So listen, Dustin, I'm going to let you go here, and I appreciate everybody calling, but I need to get some news done here. We're going to do a shout out now to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network, and I'm going to ask the other callers who are waiting online to please be a little bit more patient while I get some news out, because there's some important things that we really need to get to. Basically, because of this memo, Robert Mueller's special counselor's probe is going to collapse. And interestingly enough, there's been a story come on out where Mueller has asked the court to postpone the sentencing of General Mike Flynn. And this is probably because the investigation was begun under false pretenses. Mueller may have to go on back and basically say, the conviction has to be overturned. So the whole thing is starting to fall apart just like that. Let's see. Congressional Black Caucus member caught playing iPhone games during the State of the Union. Here are some more reactions here. Stephen King, the horror author, and I do like his books, and it's not even a genre that I'm really big on. But apparently he's calling the Republican train crash karma. And that, I think, is a very tacky thing to say. And I'm getting more and more emails and seeing more and more articles where people think there is just something very funny about this crash, that this may have been an attempt to literally kill off a significant portion of the Republicans in Congress. Boy, the phone lines are really, really full. I'm going to take some more calls here and see if I can clear the lines. Steve in Massachusetts, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, there is a war that's going on in D.C. There's the good guys and the bad guys. What you're saying
there are
is,
good guys in D.C.?
Well, I think what Trump is doing and the people behind him are cleaning house, and this is the result of all that, whether it be the FISA memo or if you look, remember that conversation you said yesterday about the senator that got shot, Steve Scalise?
Yes.
The baseball game?
Yes.
If you notice, why would he get shot? And if you notice, a couple months before he got shot, he went on YouTube, made a video, and says, we are going to crack down on human trafficking. It's a huge problem in this country, and it needs to be taken care of. Sure enough, he gets taken down, almost killed because of the incident. And if you look,
I don't know that there's a linkage. You're assuming there's a linkage there.
I am. But if you notice, the media's hush-hush about human trafficking.
Yes.
California had 510 arrests a couple days ago.
Yes.
Why was that not mentioned in the news? Last year, there was close to 5,000 arrests in human trafficking. I think it's all connected. I think the people in Washington and the deep state make their money in human trafficking along with the drugs, and I think it's all connected.
Well, I would go another direction. I would go another direction, and this is based on the Franklin scandal, and that is that people at the top of the media and people inside government, they're not necessarily engaged in the trafficking themselves, but they are customers. Because that's what we learned during the Franklin scandal. And that may be the reason that even though Donald Trump's program to deal with human trafficking, which was one of his platforms, it is working and it's leading to all these arrests, it's not going to get the coverage because they don't want people getting alarmed at the scale of human trafficking, because then the public would demand something be done. Anyway, Steve, I'm sorry to keep the phone.
Can I say one more thing?
Real quick.
Can I say one more thing? And December 21st, Donald Trump made an executive order on human trafficking, and it says we're going to freeze all the assets of the people who are involved. Now, that was huge because a lot of the people on top who are involved are now going to have their assets frozen, the money frozen, and not only that, he said this is a state of national security, which gets the military involved as well. So I think this is whole part of the war that's going on, that's going behind the scenes, that people don't really know what's going on yet. But I think it's, the whole train, that's just purposely done, of course. And I think that's a deep state fighting back. And that's all I want to say. I think there's a huge war going on in D.C.
I think it's more likely that it was a Democratic operation, and we know that the Clintons, going all the way back to Arkansas, there have been all these strange, bizarre deaths. The train is just another one on a larger scale. Steve, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to try and get through these phone calls and get back to the news. Alex in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, I just wanted to say that this is another accomplishment of Trump. His first year, it's a huge accomplishment. We need to support him. And I also wanted to ask the 17 intelligence agencies that had credible information that Russia hacked our election, what information did they go on? Did they go on the dossier? I think they did.
They may have, but I think the claim that all of the intelligence agencies confirmed Russia had hacked the DNC server was something that was made up by the media, and the intelligence agencies themselves came on out afterwards and said, no, we never said that. And in any event, forensic analysis of the data on the flash drive shows it was copied off by somebody on the premises. It wasn't hacked out over the internet because of the speed with which the files were transferred. At this point, it's pretty obvious it was Seth Rich, and he was killed for his trouble.
Yes, I agree with you. And this is kind of unfortunate, but it's an opportunity for Trump. If the stock market does continue to crash, it could be blamed on the Democrats because people lost confidence in our government. I don't trust our government anymore.
No, I don't I haven't trusted the government since Jim Garrison's trial of Clay Shaw. I don't know that Trump could get away with blaming the Democrats for the stock market crash, but I have absolutely no doubt the Democrats will blame Trump if the stock market crashes.
Yes. Well, I don't know. I think that Trump is going to win in a landslide, and you've always said we're going to have a Soviet Union style collapse, and this could be the beginning of it.
It could very well be the beginning of it. These are dramatic times here. Okay, Alex, thank you very much for the phone call. Let's switch to Cody in Dallas. Aloha, Cody. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, I just did a real quick search on a connection between Clinton and also Mueller, and it goes back to the uranium-1 trade-off. Apparently, Bill's not the only one famous for tarmac meetings. He dropped off a sample of uranium to Russia. You probably already know about this, Mike. But
yes.
I thought it was a funny little connection there. And also, one more thing, and I'll just let you go. One only has to go back to Watergate to find out how well connected the Clintons were into the Department of Justice. She didn't just walk into the Watergate one day and they say, hey, there's a cute little girl. Let's have her on the... I bet you she goes back to the Johnson era Department of Justice.
I'm going to have to go back and look at that because I thought her job on the Watergate Investigation Committee was like her second or third job out of college, out of law school.
Well, it probably was because of her age, but I guarantee you she didn't just walk in out of college into the Watergate scandal.
Well, I seem to recall that, there was somebody that pulled some strings for her to basically get the job at the Capitol and then be hired on as a staffer for the investigation. There was some
her
politics.
Family goes back into Chicago Mafia.
Well,
and, I bet you there's some connections there.
I'd have to go back and look at that. Anyway, Cody, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here and take a call from Jerry in Chicago. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Thanks for taking my call. Hey, I wanted to just bring up something that Dustin reminded me of. It was the Democratic machine. Here in Chicago, Mayor Richard J. Daley, the elder, he had a thing of corruption I was just a little kid at the time, but he was mayor up until I was 15 or 16 years old. And for many, many terms, and then his kid gets in. So that machine of corruption was going on here in Chicago for a long time. And your last caller just mentioned something about the ties with Hillary's father in Chicago, which I had recently learned about. And one other question: you have an island over there in Hawaii. Is something about a sovereign country? You know anything about that?
Well, there is a portion of one of the islands that has been ceded back to a sovereign government of Hawaii, and this follows Bill Clinton's acknowledgement when he was president that the U.S. annexation of Hawaii was illegal, and the Hawaiian people, the native Hawaiian people, never surrendered their sovereignty. And so they've been given this land kind of like a nation within a nation to govern for themselves as kind of a symbolic gesture. It's really not worth that much, but there is actually now a Kingdom of Hawaii. They're working to get diplomatic status around the world. They've already been recognized by some other countries. They've got their own passports and everything. We've had their foreign minister, Leon Hsu, on the show a couple of times, and probably it's time to get him back on again. So anything else, Jerry?
One other thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ken O'Keefe, but this is where I got this from last weekend, watching a YouTube video of him. And I guess he was like a congressman for a 24th district of that sovereign country of Hawaii. And he he gave up his U.S. citizenship. He was the Marine
Yes.
that was outspoken about the Gulf War. Yeah, okay. I don't know if he still is or what. I could have sworn they said something about a date of 2006 he ran for a congressional seat.
Well, he would have had to have run for a congressional seat while he was still a U.S. citizen, because the sovereign kingdom of Hawaii is not represented directly in the United States Congress. They have their own government that they just do what they're going to do over there.
Okay, and one other thing that he had mentioned was that the nuclear arms for the United States is 7,000, and 3,000 of them are down there in Hawaii.
It's not 3,000, but we do have quite a lot of them here. This is basically the unsinkable battleship Hawaii, and there are a lot of nuclear weapons. They're basically stored over on the leeward side of the island, and they have a few that they like to show off down there in Pearl Harbor itself. Anyway, thank you for the phone call. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back with one more call and then back to the news. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take one more phone call, then get back to the news. Joe in Eastern Tennessee. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. This whole thing with the memo, I was really happy to see this morning in one of Trump's tweets, it was a quote from Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch.
Yes.
And the reason I'm happy about it is, you know, you worry when you get a president, he's going to be like in a bubble. You know, they're going to keep limit his sources of information and not allow a guy like Tom Fitton to even get through to him. And I also heard this week that Trump called Michael Savage, and he listens to Michael Savage, and also heard Lou Dobbs say that the president watches his show. So you never know. He might even be listening to you, Michael. But
Hi,
I'm
Donald.
just happy about... Yeah, hi, Donald. Again, you're doing a great job if you're listening. But it just makes me, you know, really kind of takes a little bit of worry that I was, you know, because I know the kind of person Trump is. And, you know, the thing that makes me worry about him is that if he compromises too much and makes a deal where he gives away too much, and also that his sources of information, and to know that he's, you know, seeing him quote Fenton and listening to Savage and Lou Dobbs, and I'm sure others, maybe Jones and a few others, that means he's getting some sources of information that aren't deep state controlled. And it really kind of cheers me up to know that.
Yeah, it is good, because one of our concerns has been that, as you say, his handlers try and control him. They control him by controlling what he knows. And there were some moments where it seemed like Donald Trump wasn't aware of some of the things that were going on out here. But apparently, yes, assuming that really is Donald Trump making those tweets, then yes, he's plugging into sources of information that are not being filtered by his White House staff.
And as far as this memo, I'm just enjoying watching these Democrats and these media commentators just continue to walk further and further off the plank and going further and lose. They're going to lose their credibility, and some of them might even be going to prison, which I hope. But to just not, you know, I thought today, I'm like, well, maybe they can like try to get a little bit of credibility back and say, yeah, the Justice Department was, you know, violating the rules, but no, they're just going out. They're going to go all the way with this. So
yeah,
that's good. That means that Trump's going to have to destroy him. And once again, I was worried he was going to compromise with him, but no, let's have a war. These people need to be destroyed. They don't need to be given a break and take their retirement on a beach somewhere. No, they need to be in prison.
I agree. They should be fired. They should lose their pensions. They should go to jail. We're not just talking about a repeat of the Watergate scandal. We're talking about the Department of Justice and the FBI that institutionally are contemptuous of the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, just one last thing, Mike. I go on Facebook or whatever, and I see these ads for like Bitcoin, and I missed the boat on it, but it's coming back down, and it's interesting to me that every time I see an ad for Bitcoin, it's a gold coin. You know what I mean? It's like shiny and it's gold colored and it looks like a coin. And I'm just thinking, you know, you think about that, like how they try to advertise it and get customers. They go to the real money, which is gold. And I'll leave it at that. And I wish you a happy weekend. So.
Well, thank you very much for that. And originally, when Bitcoin first started, they wanted to have those tokens, but it's since been delinked because the Bitcoin worth has gone through the roof. The coin itself is actually gold-plated copper, and I know because at one point I had one, but I gave it away to somebody who's working in the financial system as a novelty for their desk. Okay, Roxanne in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, good afternoon. I just want to say I'm glad to hear Lady Claire will be able to join today. That'd be exciting to listen and her points of view. And then, real briefly on that Clinton back to Chicago, Hugh Rodham was her dad, of course.
Yes.
And it was Dan Rostenkowski. They took over for Capone. And then I'll leave that there. But on this dossier thing, what has to get out, I believe, is publish the 4 thesis and the 18 State Department emails and the Wiener staff connection, because I think those were redacted or something. And that will all take us into uranium-1 data and the yellow cake and using the geolocation, that G4S. Remember all that stuff found in the phone booth over at BC? So anyway, that's it. I'm glad Lady Claire's back. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, this is just the opening crack in the enemy's fortress wall. And it is the beginning, and it's going to take a while. But yes, we want to get on back to the tarmac meeting. We want to get on back to the uranium-1 deal. We want to get on back to the Clinton Foundation, all of this stuff bit by bit. We just keep hammering away at it. We know that we in the independent media are going to have to do this because the corporate media is still part of the problem. They are totally under the control of the intelligence agencies, the politicians, and their corporate owners. And they're all still thinking that if they just stand united and shout, "We're innocent," loud enough and often enough, that the American people will just say, "Okay, fine," and go away. So we're going to see a lot of distractions in the near future. Going to take another break here for commercials, and we'll be back with some news after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to get some news out of the way, turning over to the war zones. Apparently, the militants' defense in eastern Idlib has collapsed under the onslaught of the Turkish armed forces and the Free Syrian Army. And they've captured the town of Bulbul, as well as the villages of Ali Kakar, Zara, and Al-Ham from the Kurdish forces in the area. So that is still, unfortunately, a hotbed of violence. Now, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has basically come on out with a very provocative statement. He's warning countries in the Western Hemisphere to basically beware of Chinese investment, saying it represents an attempt by China to colonize the West. And he also basically dissed Russia for selling weaponry to unfriendly authoritarian governments in the region. Because after all, that's our business. How dare you cut in on our action? So again, we're seeing all this hostile talk, this great power talk directed at Russia and China. I would hope that our government really isn't so stupid as to think that we can take on Russia and China in a war and not come out of it utterly destroyed. Now, apparently, the Pentagon is getting ready to release the Nuclear Posture Review. In fact, it should have come on out today, and it basically sets out the Trump administration's nuclear strategy and rationale for modernizing U.S. sea, air, and land-based strategic nuclear forces known as the nuclear triad. More bombers, more submarines, more land-based missiles, like the Aegis. Well, the Aegis ashore is an interceptor. It's not a nuclear attack weapon. All right, we're going to take a phone call here. Glenn in Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, a report from 2011. In 2009, the Inspector General found that a significant number of 14,000 FBI agents were cheating on their exams. The exam they were taking was surveillance without with proper concern for the rights of the citizen. Go to Wired.com, a 2011 report. This is nothing new, and it's not a small minority. Like the Inspector General said, a significant number of 14,000 FBI agents were not only cheating, blatantly cheating, they knew they were cheating, and they were cheating so hard that the Inspector General had to come in and check it out. Thanks, Mike. Have a nice night.
All right, thanks an awful lot for that information. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the FBI's history. They're not the good guys. They're the American version of the Stasi or the Gestapo or the GRU. Now, over in Turkey, Turkey has apparently broken their promise to not harass locally employed staff at the U.S. missions inside Turkey. Apparently, police interrogated a Turkish citizen working for the U.S. consulate in Istanbul. So it looks like relations between Turkey and the United States are continuing to break down. Now, U.S. forces have arrived in Israel, 3,000 U.S. troops, and they're there supposedly to take part in a major joint military exercise simulating a massive missile attack on Israel. Now, again, knowing the operational limits of Iron Dome, Patriot, THAAD, if you're being hit by thousands of missiles, there really isn't anything that you can do. But it's significant that these troops are arriving in Israel just as Israel continues to threaten Lebanon. And basically is now talking about a full-strength ground invasion, which raises the possibility that these American troops are going to be used to go into Lebanon and fight a war for Israel. Because Israel's gone into Lebanon a couple of times before, and it hasn't worked. They've been pushed back every time, in part because of the fierceness of the Hezbollah fighters. And Israel wants that Litani River. And I would be very disappointed if Donald Trump has sent American kids to be killed and crippled in Israel's invasion of Lebanon. I'll still be disappointed if the U.S. troops are simply put on the border to discourage Lebanon from a retaliatory strike of any kind. Israel should just fight its own wars, and if they lose, they should deal with that. Nikki Haley is out there at the UN slamming their report on 206 companies with ties to Israeli settlements. She says it's a complete waste of time and resource, and it shows an anti-Israeli obsession. I have to tell you, I find it absolutely disgusting to see the United States government and all these politicians clearly a puppet regime serving Israel. Nobody likes living under a puppet regime. The Iranians didn't like it. The Afghanis didn't like it. The Yemenites didn't like it. Why should we be any more comfortable with it? All right, we're going to take another phone call. Tom in Connecticut, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, that Tillerson comment you just mentioned.
Yes.
I think I heard Donald Trump saying something about the Chinese investing $400 million into the coal in West Virginia.
Well, China's investing a lot. Trump's trying to get other countries to invest in our country.
Well, exactly. Yeah, but isn't that kind of incongruous given, Tillerson's,
well,
warning?
Tillerson's comment was directed less at the United States and more at all Western countries. And maybe his goal is to have these other countries avoid Chinese investment, so more Chinese investment comes here to the United States.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting ploy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we're going to switch to John in Tennessee. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I didn't know anything about this. Oh, you got me there?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I didn't know anything about the 3,000 troops in Israel. I cannot believe that story's out there. I was listening to Christian talk radio today, and I listened to this prophecy guy just pop off I mean, I spent 7 years in the Baptist church, and I was there when that whole Left Behind series came out.
Yes.
And that's the way that whole movie and the book began, was that massive attack on Israel. I mean, it's 70 years since they created that political state. Everybody thinks the generation that saw, the Jews go back to their homeland would be the generation that, I mean, they're just working people over. So now, because Putin said he was going to leave Syria, now he says he's going to stay there. This guy, this prophecy teacher, was piling it on with the Great Bear, Russia, Hezbollah, Iran-backed Hezbollah, and obviously the evil Assad regime. They're all sitting on Israel's northern border. This is prophecy about to break loose, and now you just capped it off with the 3,000 troops that are going to simulate such an attack. I mean, the Christian churches are so duped in this country to believe in this political state of Israel. They think it's all Bible prophecy. They think the Jews are God's chosen. They've bought into all of that stuff.
Yes.
And it's just a shame that these people would run out there and just die for that political state and not look at what Netanyahu is, what he's done. Just go Google a picture of Netanyahu with Hillary Clinton. If all these Christians hate the Clintons and think they're evil, how do they not know, right, that
Yes.
that he loves Hillary,
Well, I don't know that he loves her. He just finds her useful.
Yeah, well, and like your other caller said, too, is the uranium one deal mixed? I mean, the Clintons made, what, $31.3 million off of that?
Nobody's really sure how much they made because, the records at the Clinton Foundation, nobody has actually opened an official investigation into the Clinton Foundation. And so the only numbers that have come on out there are the ones the Clinton Foundation themselves have voluntarily released. But we don't know how accurate those numbers are. There could have been a lot more money that went through that office or those offices.
Had you ever seen the other report about the whistleblower and that Uranium One, the guy that, at the FBI's direction, paid the $200,000 in bribes? And then Rod Rosenstein threatened this guy. This guy filed a lawsuit against the DOJ.
Yeah.
And Rosenstein told him, "You better back off, or your liberty and your reputation is going to be, curtailed."
Yes.
It sounded like the FBI wanted that. The FBI wanted the uranium deal to go through. So it's like you said, peeling it off. Let's keep pressuring them because, I mean, the corruption's—it's unbelievable, and I really want Trump to stomp it out. But Putin is supposed to get his hands on 20% of our uranium. All this talk about nukes and Nikki Haley, right?
Yep.
They just invoked a whole bunch of sympathy on her yesterday, right? With Mika Brzezinski kicking Michael Wolff off the show for slandering her. So now everybody just loves, poor Nikki Haley, she's a victim. Well, now she's out there talking tough against Russia.
Yeah.
We know she's a world government attack Iran person. I would think Trump wouldn't want her and her pro-UN rhetoric. I don't like her at all. I'm surprised he does.
Yeah, Trump's made a lot of decisions I don't agree with since he's come into office, and I'm very disappointed in him. But he is the elected president, and what the FBI, Department of Justice, what the deep state was doing to him is flat out wrong. It is rebellion. It's insurrection. It's criminal. And I'm not going to wait for anybody else to try and solve this issue. I'm not going to wait for Donald Trump to make it right. I'm not going to wait for the corporate media to report it. I'm just going to keep hammering on the story. And for that, obviously, both I and Republic Broadcasting, between my website, my radio show, Republic Broadcasting, we need your help to keep going because all of this stuff costs a lot of money. And again, our advertisers are under attack. And being threatened to basically stop doing business with us. So things are a little tight right now.
All right. Well, like you said, it's time for some people to start going to jail. And if Jeff Sessions or somebody, Trey Gowdy's leaving, which is a disappointment, but if somebody doesn't start slapping down indictments, putting people in handcuffs, and then the other guy, the deputy director, he's going to get his pension. That guy should lose his pension. I don't know why.
I agree.
Say no, you're not going to get a pension.
I agree. I agree.
So, yeah. Yep. Okay.
All
Well,
right.
I'll talk to you later, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. And I'm sorry to be brief and rushing, but I have a lot of stuff to cover, and it's only 15 minutes until the lovely Lady Claire joins us. Now, Henry Kissinger is out there basically acknowledging that inside Washington, D.C., the temptation to hit North Korea with a preemptive attack is apparently very wrong. And he does agree with the aggressive statements President Trump has aimed at North Korea. But Kissinger is saying that a potential military intervention near the Russian and Chinese borders would be very questionable unless they had the support of the rest of the world. And they're not going to get that. The rest of the world is sick and tired of America's adventurism. Okay. Speaking of Korea, and this is where the sanctions really, I think, get silly. As you know, there are North Korean athletes who are going to the Olympics in South Korea, and everybody who competes in the Olympics, there's all kinds of goodies that you get. You know, advertisers want to have pictures of these Olympians with their products, so they get Samsung phones and Nike uniforms and all kinds of stuff. But because of the sanctions, the North Korean athletes may not be eligible for all these Olympic perks because of the UN Security Council sanctions. Now, I think somebody ought to issue a waiver. These are just kids. They're not political. They're not military. They're just athletes. They have trained their entire lives for this event. And I think somebody ought to say the sanctions don't apply here. Let them get their little bag of goodies. They're going to keep that stuff for the rest of their life. Say, I got this at the Olympics. I think they ought to do that. All right, so let's talk about the economy, because what a roller coaster of a day it was. The Dow plunged almost 700 points and about 2.5% in a single day. And this is the first time since June of 2016 that the Dow fell at least 500 points. And this is the worst weekly performance in 2 years. Now, here's the interesting part. It isn't just the stocks that went down. Metals went down too. Now, it used to be when the market would go down, gold and silver would go up because people were selling the stocks and buying the metals. But the metals went down too. So did the cryptocurrencies. I think people are cashing out. I think people are basically just getting on out because they're not sure if the market is going to recover or if this is the beginning of the correction everybody has been talking about. Okay, let's grab another phone call. Dave in Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mr. Rivero. Can you hear
Yes.
me? Okay, I've been listening to your show for a while, and I got a couple of quotes here. First off, let me say I'm a social psychologist and kind of been barking up the wrong tree my whole career, because what's going on here in the United States is basically a military attack. And in social psychology, they don't cover that in the university system. It's just totally absent. So I've started to get into PSYOPs. I've run into a really interesting book, National Security Management. Global Psychological Conflict by the Industrial College of the Armed Forces. It's really old. It's 1961, but they're analyzing the first chapter, some of the communist efforts that took place in the Bolshevik Revolution. So I just wanted to read a couple of points here.
Okay, well, I'm gonna have to put you on hold here because we got to take a commercial break, and when we come on back, you're going to need to keep this brief and sum up because we're coming up on the top of the hour and the Lady Claire. So we're going to take a break here for some commercials, and we'll be back with Dave in Virginia right after these words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Dave in Virginia, and Dave, we got about 4 minutes before the next break, so go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll try to be as quick as I can. I guess the first point that I want to make is that we are under a military attack here in this country. It's a military psychological attack. Now, this analysis of the Bolshevik revolution in Russia. There are several different points, but I think that some of them are pertinent to what's going on here in the United States right now. Point one is the creation of a psychologically strong, obedient, disciplined, steadfast, and iron-willed leadership corps which thinks and behaves in a certain way, and in that way only, and in that way for a long time regardless of obstacles. Two, the creation of a larger group of oriented propagandists who spread communist notions and are instrumental in creating and maintaining a suitable frame of reference imposed upon non-communists. That would be us. Three, the creation of both groups, the creation in both groups of a burning sense of hatred. Four, disciplined and controllability of subject populations, which must be commanded by the unopposed will of the party leadership. Five, the creation in the ruling upper and intellectual classes of non-communist societies, frustration, confusion, pessimism, guilt, fear, defeatism, hopelessness, and neurosis of a lack of will, in essence, the psychological destruction of anti-communist leadership. Six, the splitting of a society into many competing and mutually hostile groups, and the sapping of the spirit of loyalty, community, mutual helpfulness, positive expectation, and willingness to take risk and to act. And then I'm going to skip down to 9. The promise of relief from all troubles by means of an infallible as well as an inevitable solution. So what's going on here is that it's basically not communist. It's reformed secular Jews that are doing this, who are at war with Orthodox Jews in Israel. People keep saying it's Jews, Jews, Jews. It's reformed secular Jews. It's not those Orthodox Jews in Israel. It's American Jews, and they're at war with each other. So what's going on here is they've created such a sick society that what they're going to do is build up the pressure and build up the pressure, and then it looks to me like they're going to collapse the market and try to create some sort of a religious crusade. You know,
I have to say, I'm having a hard time accepting this right now, and maybe that was what the Bolsheviks did. But right now, the sense I get is that the people who are currently in power don't want there to be any significant changes because they would no longer be in power. And again, I think a much closer analogy to what's going on in this country right now can be had by looking at the decline and collapse of the former Soviet Union. Anyway, Dave, thank you for the insights. We're going to let you go because we're almost here at the end of this segment. And we're going to take a quick break for station identification. When we come on back, the lovely Lady Claire will be with us. Now, until the music starts here, apparently Democrats are now promising they're going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. They can't stand the idea of ordinary people having more money. They think it should all be collected and spent by the liberals. There's the music. We'll be back after station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And for those of you watching on YouTube, this gorgeous creature sitting next to me. The camera's there. Oh. That one.
Okay.
This is for other things.
Okay.
And is the lovely Lady Claire. And welcome back to the show. You have been missed, not only by myself, but by a lot of people out there in our audience. And we're all collectively so glad that your back is getting back to normal. And
yeah.
You know.
Yes, and I want to take a moment to thank everyone who called into the show to ask, had some suggestions on various things, had some good words for me, or were praying for me. All of the above is good. I'm getting better. I think my wrestling career is over, but...
You don't want to wrestle with me?
Well, dear, that depends on the context.
Oh, okay. All right, well.
Relax, guys. We're married.
I'm not a dirty old man. I'm a sexy senior citizen.
Okay. I wanted to talk about a response by John McCain to the memo's release. And, of course, we're all talking about the memo and the fact that this is a watershed moment in American political history. It may prove to be one of the most intense watershed moments this country has ever faced. Mike, I think you would agree.
I agree.
And McCain's response to the memo release was, I thought, rather amazing. And he said in his tweet, The latest attacks on the FBI and Department of Justice serve no American interests. No parties, no presidents, only Putin's.
Well, we're getting that from a lot of people. The memo is out. They can't refute it.
Nope.
It's from the House of Representatives itself.
Yeah.
And so now it's all a Russian plot. Maxine Waters is now claiming the Russians are trying to get her.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was the one host over at MSNBC was saying Paul Ryan is obviously on Team Russia now. So that's where they're back. That anybody who criticizes the government, no matter how egregiously the government has behaved, you must be a Russian agent.
Yeah, and one thing that I was sensing here, that McCain feels he is compelled to lie about this issue when many Americans have just awakened to one of the most egregious betrayals of whatever faith we had left in a corrupt and rotten federal government. There, I said it. It's a moment, hopefully, of positive transformation, but it's still very scary because, as you mentioned at the end of the first hour, those in power want like heck to stay in power, and they will do anything. And I mean anything.
Including possibly derail a train full of Republican lawmakers. And it's interesting when you remember that John McCain is supposedly in the same party as Donald Trump. But he's out there basically, obviously, he's with the Democrats and the deep state on this one.
Yeah. And, the man makes millions a year on a senator's salary. I have to wonder how that comes to him. But anyway, I was just kind of
basically
floored.
he takes his money and he invests it based on what he learns inside the Congress.
Of
Technically,
course.
it's insider trading, but nobody ever goes after politicians.
Right. I'd like to bop on over to Asia now. Apparently, there are protesters seeking to overthrow Thailand's independent institutions, including its military and constitutional monarchy. And what this will do in turn is to return U.S. proxies to power, the billionaire and former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra and his Pheu Thai party. This guy is a convicted criminal who fled Thailand to evade a 2-year jail sentence and a myriad of court cases that are still pending trial. And this is really where the U.S. gets ugly. You have the NGOs there. You've got a lot of other people. You probably have training and background work by American advisors.
It looks like another regime change.
Yeah, it looks like another color revolution.
And just like the U.S. has been trying to sort of garrison and wall off Russia over the last several years, regime changing Thailand may be the beginning of trying to do the same thing to China. And basically encircle them with hostile nations to keep them contained.
I'd like to go over now to North Korea. A very interesting development has happened. Apparently, a North Korean delegation is flying to Russia for talks on mutual cooperation.
So here we have another pivot. The U.S. pushes on a country, they pivot away, and they go to Russia and or China.
Yeah, and the timing is interesting because the sides plan to discuss joint events to be held dedicated to the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. And Mike, I've got to ask you, I wonder what precisely the North Korean delegation is going to be moving toward. Will it be weapons? Will it be food? What do you think they believe they're going to get after seeing how beautifully Russian influence worked in Syria to get rid of the jihadis?
Well, that may be the long-term goal here, but the other thing that we need to consider is that North Korea has been basically cut off from all Western commerce by these U.S. sanctions. And so basically, I think the immediate goal of North Korea is to buy food and to find some markets for its exports and basically get some commerce going that the U.S. can't shut off.
Yeah, and of course, what happens then with the American sanctions? Will they start boarding Russian ships if they think they're sending goods to North Korea, I mean, that's tantamount to an act of war, right?
Well, it's actually piracy.
Yeah.
Boarding somebody else's ship in international waters without
Right.
their permission is piracy.
Right.
And if Russia decides to escort their ships with military vessels, then you
Oh,
run the risk
man.
of getting into a shooting war.
This could get hot very quickly. Yeah.
I would imagine that quite probably Russian support will more than likely be land-based on the rail lines.
Yeah, that would make sense.
In order to avoid that kind of a confrontation. We're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And what is your next news story, please?
Well, the next news story I have also concerns North Korea.
Okay.
The White House wants more options from the Pentagon for attacking North Korea. And they're really pressing the ladies and gentlemen at the Pentagon to provide different plans for attacking North Korea militarily. Now, officials are said to be frustrated by the limited choices offered by the Pentagon and want better options. Now, the person who seems to be at the head of this push is National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, who is telling Trump that for his repeated threats to attack North Korea to be credible, the U.S. needs to have more plans to attack them.
No, I disagree with that.
Yeah.
All you need is one workable plan.
Yes.
And Trump's rhetoric becomes credible. But there are really only two options. What it comes on down to, which is a targeted strike on where you think the missiles and the nuclear weapons are, and possibly on Kim Jong-un himself, a
Good
decap
luck
strike,
on that, yeah.
or a full-on invasion with all of the consequences that will happen.
Yeah, it's really painful to me. And it's painfully obvious that the candidate, Trump, that many of us supported, you thought we were actually getting, is not the President Trump we have.
No, we did not get the President Trump that we voted for, the President Trump who promised that he was going to pull back from all this global adventurism, and instead he's shoved it into overdrive.
Yeah.
And that is probably the biggest disappointment that I have with Donald Trump.
And it somehow appears that he has indeed become one with the dark side of the Force and has been thoroughly overtaken philosophically by his president whisperers.
I don't know, dark side of the Force.
Yeah.
With that hair?
And unfortunately, a lot of the people in the military and the Pentagon and his three people over there, McMaster, Kelly, and Mattis, seem to believe that war is the only option with which to resolve this country's geopolitical differences.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. War gets them money. War gets them funding.
Right.
War gets them promotions.
Yes.
If you remember the original movie of MASH, and the Colonel character would begin every speech in the dark days before Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And it was such a bizarre thing. And I got to work with that actor in a later movie, and I said, what exactly does that mean? And he says, well, it was basically before Pearl Harbor, nobody was getting promoted. And then Pearl Harbor began, and everybody was getting promotions, and I got to be a full bird colonel. And that's basically what it means. War, the reason all of these people want war, it gets them more money. More money means more power. It gets them more rapid advancement.
Right.
And that's what they want.
And to the Pentagon officials who are uncomfortable about giving the president more options for North Korea and are calling on him for restraint and caution, I say bravo. And I don't believe that in 68 years of life on this planet that I have ever had something remotely positive to say about the Pentagon. However, that being said, in this instance, I feel compelled to say that this was probably a sound choice on their part.
Well, it may have been motivated by the realization that the U.S. forces are overextended around the globe.
Oh, man,
We've been at war for 17 years.
Yeah.
And we're still mired in Afghanistan, which is now our longest war in U.S. history. We're stuck in Syria. We're stuck in Libya. We're still messing around in Yemen.
Yes.
And we're spread very thin. Our stockpiles are drawn down. Our existing weapons are worn out because they're not really designed to last very long, on the theory that they're going to get shot up after so many days or weeks in service. The only things that are built to last a long time are the hulls of the Navy ships.
Right.
And so the Pentagon may be thinking it's one thing to have a war and get money and promotion out of it, but quite another to lose that war and lose everything.
Yeah.
So the Pentagon may be taking the position that we'd better clean up the mess we have now.
Yeah.
Fight and win the wars that we have now before we start taking on any more.
Yeah, because they understand that such an act may well threaten a world war pitting North Korea, China, and Russia, and who knows who else, against the U.S. and NATO. And the U.S. and NATO are absolutely not ready for such a war because of the issues that you mentioned.
Well, we've got NATO countries fighting each other now in Syria.
Oh, boy.
So that alliance may collapse.
Possibly. Another thing that I thought was interesting regarding Asia, apparently State Department is going to send ambassador to Singapore to sell, I use that word for a purpose, sell F-35 warplanes. And starting next week, the Singapore Air Show is a place for international arms deals to go down. And the U.S. arms makers like Lockheed and Raytheon are responsible for some of the biggest deals, but finding buyers isn't always easy.
Well, Raytheon's going to have a hard time after cratering that Standard Missile Block 2 test out there on Kauai.
Yeah, that was pretty grim.
Yes.
The U.S. has apparently decided that selling Lockheed planes isn't just Lockheed's job. It's the American Diplomatic Corps' job, and is sending Ambassador, I'm not kidding, Tina Kaonohi to the air show specifically to drum up sales for the F-35.
Well, Tina, climb on into that cockpit and take off and show us what that baby can do.
Well, there are massive problems with the plane. It's still not out of development. It's still costing the American taxpayer millions of dollars and just can't perform. So, Mike, I have to wonder just how Ambassador Kaonohi feels about shilling for one of the U.S.'s top merchant of death, namely Lockheed Martin Corporation.
Hey, it's just part of the job description. If ambassadors were willing to do that, they wouldn't be ambassadors. And using the diplomatic corps to support sales from the military-industrial complex, there's nothing new about that. It has been done before. Basically, what it amounts to is the recognition that these countries aren't going to buy these arms on the face of their
PR.
Performance and cost. And so the diplomatic crew is there to basically do some arm twisting and saying, if you buy the F-35s, then we'll do this other little deal on the side that will be good for you.
And also, the world has been seeing what wonderful effect Russian weaponry has had in Syria.
Absolutely.
And it's cheaper.
Yes.
And it's made intelligently and well. You had designers sitting together in a room instead of, 95 million cubicles trying to put this thing together. And it shows. And I can understand countries' leadership not wanting to look and to buy, because we don't really have the stuff Russia does.
No, we really don't. And again, I'm opposed to war, but I am a fan of aviation, and there is just something aesthetically pleasing about those Russian aircraft. And as compared to American aircraft, I mean, the YF-21, I think that was very pretty. The F-22, same thing. The F-35 is ugly. I'm sorry, that is an ugly airplane. On top of all of its other problems, it's ugly.
Right,
Okay.
right. This next article comes to us from TASS, which is a Russian to English blog. And apparently, NATO warships are looking for the opportunity to break Crimea's defense. And they've got the Duncan destroyer and the Gaziantep, which is Turkish frigate, and have reserved places for Mk.41 vertical takeoff missile launchers.
That's pronounced Mark. The Mark 41 vertical launch system.
Thank you. Okay. These are unified installations that can be used to launch Tomahawk cruise missiles. And, there have been some tit-and-tat situations where America said Russians came in too soon, too fast, or too close.
Well, what are you doing over there near the Russian territory was what it comes on down to. Very obviously, a lot of reconnaissance is going on. It does look like somebody is seriously thinking about simply invading Crimea.
Yeah.
That will definitely bring us to direct conflict with Russia. Russia will not stand for that, I don't think.
Oh, no. I don't think Putin and the Duma are going to be sitting down and singing Kumbaya if that were to happen.
Yep.
And it looks to me, Mike, as though NATO is playing picador here and is spoiling for a fight, but I would very strongly caution NATO to please be very careful about what it wishes for as the outcome in this very aggressive behavior against the Russian military.
Well, here is where things might fall apart. NATO is already very strained, especially with the situation in Syria.
Yeah.
And many of the NATO members are, of course, countries in Europe that still have the scars from the first two world wars.
Yeah.
And with this idea of NATO just going along with the U.S. to start a third world war, which could likely involve Europe yet again, I would not be surprised to see some of these NATO member nations say, you know, I think we're going to get on out.
Yeah.
Especially ones that are up there to more to the north, more to the west, and just say we're going to be neutral. We're going to stay out of
this. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to go back to my home state, and to those who do not know, I am a native San Franciscan, but California has absolutely collectively lost its mind, and they are now presuming that every homeschooling parent is a child abuser. I'm not kidding you. And California is seeking to treat homeschool families as presumptive child abusers now. Lawmakers in that state indicate that they have plans to categorically require homeschool parents to prove through home visits, interviews, and other governmental oversight that indeed the parent is not abusive if they choose to exercise a still legally protected and valid option for the school choice.
Well, see, here's the issue.
Yeah.
The public school system, they want all the bodies in the classrooms they can get because they get more money.
Oh, it's tax, yeah.
And then, of course, you have those political interests, mostly liberal, that don't think children should learn anything from their parents, but be indoctrinated by the government. And this certainly goes back to the Prussian model of education, which is where public schools come from. Same thing in Hillary Clinton's book, It Takes a Village.
And what they're hitting on right now...
Well, we're going to have to take a pause here.
Okay,
all right. Have to take a pause. We'll be right back after these few words. Aloha America, welcome back to the show here, and we're talking about this new law in California
that they're looking to pass.
They're considering passing this law, which presumes all homeschooling parents are child abusers.
Now, let me share with you what they're focusing on, and we've all heard it on the corporate news. It's the horrifying case of Riverside County couple David and Louise Turpin, whose 13 kids were reportedly chained, malnourished, and clearly abused. The media and lawmakers have chosen to focus on one coincidental detail, that the Turpins were also registered as homeschoolers. So this is the basis for this law.
Well, it's a knee-jerk reaction here, and it's the same liberal thinking we see when it comes to gun laws.
Yeah.
Because one person goes on out and does something bad with a gun, let's ban guns for everybody. Because one abusive parent turned out to be a homeschooler, let's just assume that they all are. This is not good legislation.
No.
Basically, this is an attack on the freedom to educate your child as you see fit. And force them back into the indoctrination centers.
Yeah, because intelligent and caring homeschool moms and dads are under threat everywhere in this country, and that is a shame.
Well, one of the problems is the homeschool kids do better on the academic tests, especially during the era of Common Core.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the Secretary of Education DeVos has now said no more Common Core, but it's going to take a little while to actually get it replaced across the country.
To percolate down.
Yeah, to trickle down.
Yeah.
I don't know when Common Core will officially be out of the schools, but it's still being taught in a lot of places while they get in new curriculum and new books and so forth and so on.
Right.
And unfortunately, education, like so many other things in our country, it's big business. And it's stopped being about education. It's about indoctrination. But more than that, it's become just another racket to make money on.
And what the governments, both state and federal, hate is a kid with a capacity for the kind of critical thinking which can see through the government propaganda and understand the nature of its agenda in a heartbeat. So that is...
like us.
I'm
actually a 12-year-old trapped in a 65-year-old body here.
Right. I'd like to go over to Newsweek, which I describe in terms of the spelling is Newsweak, and it was a hit piece calling organic food a scam, and it was authored by a known Monsanto propagandist. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I remember when that came out.
Yeah, and all of the claims this guy is making are absolutely false and ridiculous, And he says at the end, the campaign for organic food is a deceitful, expensive scam, railed Dr. Henry.
Well, here's the irony. Here's the irony. This guy who was, and by the way, the gentleman who officially authored the piece has been caught out before for putting his name on pre-written industry supportive pieces. So this is apparently what he does for a living here, is exploiting his education degree. Here's the thing. They make the point that you have to be careful about organic produce, because you don't know what pesticides may have been put on it. Well, the whole point of organic growing is that you don't use pesticides. And again, this is Monsanto wanting to crush out people's freedom to choose to eat healthy. Because the food that is coming out of the GMO laboratory, the food that you find on your supermarket shelf, it's full of chemicals, preservatives. It's full of the stuff that makes more money for the corporation. And it may or usually is not all that good for you. But they don't want you to have the choice. You will eat your chemical goop and you will like it. And that's what this is really all about. Monsanto wants organic growing to simply go away, to basically have a monopoly.
Or be outlawed completely.
Or be outlawed so that we're forced to buy their GMO products, even if we don't want it. And again, their Roundup Ready corn is saturated with Roundup. That's a probable human carcinogen. But Monsanto wants to force you to eat it because that way they make money. And if you come down with cancer, then you'll be making money for the cancer industry. It's one racket after the other, after the other, after the other.
And Mike, we can never forget the pioneering work of Professor Gilles-Éric Seralini and his research team at the University of Caen. He did a study that was a long-term study that proved with intense physical documentation that rats who ate Monsanto's GMO corn died of horrific physical abnormalities due to the use of these Monsanto products.
Yes.
Then Monsanto got the goods on a journal and ordered them to retract Seralini's report.
Well, actually what happened was Monsanto basically used their financial leverage to have one of their executives appointed to an editorial position at the journal.
And they pulled it.
And they retracted the story, but they never discredited it. And then apparently the authors sued and won the lawsuit. Okay, we got to take another break for commercials. And we'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And Claire, please continue.
Very interesting development in Alabama, and something I think is very progressive. An Alabama Senate committee has just passed a bill that would exempt the sale of gold and silver bullion from state sales and use tax, encouraging its use and taking the first step toward breaking the Federal Reserve's monopoly on money.
Boy, I'll bet those state politicians are going to come under a lot of pressure.
Yeah. A similar bill is moving forward through the Alabama House. And if this bill passes, and I would be willing to bet you that the Federal Reserve and federal government will come after this with a hammer and tongs judicially to prevent such a moment from moving forward in this country. Because if this passes and it's not blocked, other states are going to decide, well, if Alabama can do it, we can do it too.
Absolutely. There's no reason that you can't. And if you look at the front of a Federal Reserve note, it says, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. The word that is missing is only. There is no law that says we can only conduct commerce with Federal Reserve notes.
Right.
Money is whatever two people agree to use as a medium of exchange. Silver, gold, white seashells, anything. And we should have the freedom to say we don't want to conduct our business with banknotes borrowed at interest from a bank.
Absolutely.
Which, by the way, gets us back to one of the main causes of the American Revolution. And I really believe that even though the metals went down today, investing in metals and using them as money is a good idea. I have one little caveat, though, and that is to remember, okay, when you buy those gold coins, they lose their value if you eat that chocolate bit out of the middle. So be very, very, very careful that you don't do that. And don't leave them in the sun either.
No, they'll melt. Speaking of money, U.S. regulators have fined Deutsche Bank another $70 million for trying to rig benchmark rates. And Deutsche Bank is Germany's largest lender, and they call it attempted manipulation of a global benchmark for interest rate derivatives and other financial instruments.
Now that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because apparently Deutsche Bank, and they're global, by the way.
Oh, of course.
They're global all over the place here.
Yeah.
And they're well known for mid-level executives falling off the top of parking structures and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're trying to rig an interest rate that is being used as a determiner for derivatives, then they can get a big profit just with a little tiny change to that rate. So again, it's another reminder. Banks aren't honest. They're there to make money any way that they can.
Yeah.
And they're crooked.
And the other point I'd like to talk about is why in the world does no one go to jail for signing off on these practices? So it's got to be really good to be a banking exec at Deutsche Bank, because no matter how much you tamper and play fast and loose with the rates, you'll never have to say you're sorry and can concentrate on inventing the next scams.
Well,
with
these
impunity.
bankers share the wealth from these scams with their favorite politicians. And that's, again, it's part of the culture of corruption that has come to dominate our society. And the reality is here that corporate laws that protect corporate officials from losses from their corporation, they don't extend to illegal acts. If a corporate officer commits an illegal act, then yes, they can and should be arrested, tried in court, and sent to jail. But as Claire points out, it never happens. I remember there was this weird story came out a few years ago about this president of a major bank in Southern California got into a hit and run. And the cops, after taking down his name and everything, they let him continue to his bank instead of arresting him.
That bites. I'm sorry, that really does. And speaking of something that bites, we find an article, I believe it was in the Iranian Press TV blog in English. Trump is prepared for military action in Syria to deter chemical attacks.
Oh boy, are they? They're doing that one again?
They're doing that one again. And they're saying that they're working on the stuff that they didn't give to the inspectors in 2014 to make them a more powerful weapon. Now, of course, these guys are speaking on condition of anonymity, and they told reporters in D.C. that Syrian armed forces evolved their chemical weapons and made continual use of them in smaller amounts since April of 2017. But they declined, of course, to provide any details or facts. Now, Mike, I've got to tell you, I've got a really lousy feeling in the pit of my tummy about this.
Yes.
Why is the U.S. government flogging this old dead horse now and reattaching it to some form of alleged credibility, life support as an excuse to attack Syria? I mean,
because they're on the verge of losing in Syria. They don't want to lose. Syria wants them to leave. Russia wants them to leave. Turkey's not happy about their being there.
No.
But the U.S. doesn't want to leave Syria because it will be seen as a failure. And so, they're going to gin up some kind of an excuse to basically go full on back into Syria and get Bashar al-Assad. And I guess the only thing they can think of is to go back to that tired, worn-out claim that Assad has got chemical weapons.
Yeah.
Even though the inspectors said, he surrendered them all.
Yeah.
And every time the U.S. government has tried to claim that Assad is gassing his own people, it has always come on out that these attacks are carried out by the U.S.-backed terrorists to frame Bashar al-Assad. So it looks like they're going to try and do that again.
And unless there is an ironclad proof that I can see that this has actually happened, verified a zillion times by people who are experts in this area, I'm not going to believe this for 1 second.
Well, there's a very good reason not to believe it, and that is that Assad doesn't need to use chemical weapons. He doesn't have a reason to use chemical weapons. He's won the war. He's won his war. He's still in power. And he's smart enough to realize that any chemical weapon attack will give the United States an excuse to renew their aggression. So use of a chemical weapon, it is going to be the last thing that Bashar al-Assad will do.
Oh, absolutely.
If a chemical weapon gets launched anywhere in Syria or at the Super Bowl, it's a guarantee it's the United States or one of their covert allies that's doing it.
But what really concerns me is the timing for this stuff. For this claim, because it dovetails into another reality. Turkey invaded Syria about a week ago, something you will barely hear a word on the corporate prostitutes programs. They first went through Afrin and are headed to Manjib, Syria, where American troops are embedded with Kurdish troops.
And Turkey has issued a warning saying that the Americans embedded with the Kurds are probably going to get hurt, and you should take them back home. And guess what the U.S. responded?
The U.S. General Votel has stated that he is not evacuating one of these troops. So, if Turkey attacks even one U.S. military member here, there may be hell to pay for such an action, and there is no sign of any negotiation going on between the Turks and the U.S. government. The U.S. military will not leave the city about to be attacked here. I hope and pray that our troops remain safe and do not become sacrificial lambs. But should any of them get killed or wounded, my sense is that between the bogus U.S. claim that Syria is producing more chemical weapons, coupled with a number of U.S. military casualties, courtesy of the Turkish invasion of Syria, President Trump will take to the air soon and claim that we have to invade Syria to protect the Syrian people. And they'll probably blame the bombing on Syrian and Syrian allied resources rather than
the U.S. is going to find itself literally at war both with Syria and Turkey. They're going to have Syria on one side, Turkey on the other. That is a very bad tactical position.
And again, today we heard Rex Tillerson, our Secretary of State, saying no hard evidence has come forward that al-Assad is producing chemical weapons. So what you've got is this incoherent foreign policy where the right hand knoweth not what the left hand doeth. And, it's really kind of dumb.
It is, but we're seeing more and more indications that the federal government is beginning to fragment. That it really has... You've got all these different people going in different directions.
Absolutely. Now, we have a couple of related stories in the Middle East. Israel is threatening Lebanon with a full-strength ground invasion in case of conflict. And they're making the threat Tel Aviv is ready for an all-out ground invasion of Lebanon in the event of a military conflict with Beirut. And this was stated by Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman. His comments came as relationships between the two neighbors continue to sour. What has Lebanon actually done to Israel recently?
Well, they refused to let Israel have all that clean, fresh water from the Litani River. And again, Israel's ultimate objective is the Israel described in the Bible. reaching from the Nile to the Euphrates River. And those gosh darn Lebanese people, just because they have a country, doesn't mean that they should get in our way.
Yeah. And he's also saying we must prepare for maneuvering on the ground, too, even if we do not use it, the minister said at a conference of the Institute for National Security Studies.
Well, of course they're going to use it.
Yeah.
They're going to go on in. They're backed up by these U.S. forces, apparently.
Yeah.
Again, they came within 20 miles of the Litani River last time.
Yeah.
If you look at it, the new border of Israel with Lebanon, there is that one part that sticks in, and it gets very, very close to that water, and that's what Israel wants.
Yeah. And he goes on to say that in a worst-case scenario, Israel would conduct the operation at full strength. That means an all-out war against Lebanon and Hezbollah. And he said, we must not take one step forward and one step backward. We will move forward as fast as possible, he added, speaking about the Israeli strategy in a possible conflict with its northern neighbor. Now, Michael, how are they going to create a false flag attack to make them, to make people believe that they're actually being attacked by Lebanon?
Just blow something up. That's all it's going to take.
Yeah. And we have this.
I mean, you could have one of those German-supplied Israeli submarines just off the coast of Lebanon and fire a missile over Lebanon onto Israeli soil.
Yeah. And this goes along with another article we've been talking about for the last couple of days. U.S. forces arrive in Israel as tensions rise between Tel Aviv and Beirut. Beirut's not done anything, for heaven's sakes. And they have arrived in Israel to take part in a major joint military exercise with Israeli forces as tensions with Hezbollah move from a simmer to a boil. What is Hezbollah doing that's upsetting Israel?
Well, every time Israel has tried to invade Lebanon, it's primarily been Hezbollah that has thwarted their invasion.
Yeah.
And that's why Israel and the U.S. have been trying to find some way to remove Hezbollah so that Lebanon can be easy to invade. It's the same thinking behind getting Iran to surrender their nuclear weapons or getting North Korea to surrender their nuclear weapons or all these other countries. Find a way politically to disarm them, promise you won't invade, and then invade. It's a recurring U.S. and Israeli pattern.
Right. And the U.S. forces have just arrived in Israel to take part in Juniper Cobra, which is a biennial military exercise, and it's major. The last one done in 2016, there were more than 3,000 U.S. troops who took part. And what they're going to do is imitate a massive simultaneous missile attack on Israel from southern and northern fronts, according to Channel 10. And you had the, I loved your comment on this, military exercise My Astrolabe. Those U.S. troops are there to protect Israel from a Lebanese retaliation.
Or even worse, Trump has committed American forces to help Israel invade Lebanon. Basically sent these U.S. forces. They're going to be the ones who go up against Hezbollah. They're going to be killed. They're going to be crippled in a war for Israel. And if Trump really does that, I got to tell you how furious we should all be.
Yeah.
That he's basically taking these young kids who enlisted to protect the United States of America.
Not Israel.
And now they're being shipped off across the globe like a bunch of mercenaries and just rented on out to whoever wants them.
Rent-a-merc.
Yeah, like the German Hessians in the American Revolution.
Yeah. I'm very concerned about that. I don't know how soon it may happen, but my sense is very soon because Israel wants this to happen.
Well, Israel wants it to happen, and right now there are a lot of people on the Democratic side of our political system, not to mention the FBI and the Department of Justice, who are just desperate for some major distraction to basically get the FISA memo off the air and off the independent media. And it raises the horrible prospect that may have been a motive to attempt the derailment of the GOP train on its way to Greenbrier.
Oh, my gosh.
In addition to basically, killing a bunch of Republican lawmakers to make way for Democrats in the midterm elections. Obviously, had it succeeded, it would have been a huge story completely overshadowing the FISA memo.
Yeah. I am glad that I'm terribly sorry for the people who got hurt and killed in that, but there is more than meets the eye with that incident, Michael. I truly believe there is a lot more.
Well, we know that the truck was actually on that crossing for long enough for the security helicopter to give the engineer a warning, obstruction on the track, slow down.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a case of somebody trying to run the crossing or getting stuck.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe the guys that were in the truck were patsies. Maybe they were told that their mission was to get the train to stop.
Yeah.
And it took them by surprise when they actually got rammed by it.
Yeah.
But again, I don't feel it was just a random accident.
No.
And it could have been an attempt, again, to reduce the population of incumbent Republicans in Congress to make way for Democrats in the midterms. And obviously, had it succeeded in derailing the train and killing a bunch of these Republican lawmakers, that would have completely overshadowed this morning's release of the FISA memo.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think there's a there.
I would agree with you. And the way that the Democrats have been demonizing the Republicans and never really working with them in Congress.
Well, between that and this constant, Russia plot, the Democrats have actually become a caricature of themselves.
Yeah.
And more people are saying this is not the party that true progressives should be part of any longer. We have to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program on this Pauhana Friday. And before I turn the mic back over to Claire, looking at the FISA memo, looking at all that's going on, these are very, very dangerous times for us all. And I'm a big fan of the Harry Potter movies, especially the earlier ones. And I remember at the end of one of them, and I forget which specific movie it was, when Dumbledore is talking with Harry Potter, and he has this wonderful quote, and he says, "Soon we must all make the choice between doing what is right and doing what is easy." And I think right now we're at that same junction where we're going to have to make that choice. Do we do what is right, or we do what's easy and just let the world continue to decay? Personally, I'm in favor of doing what's right, and I've been doing it for going on, close to a quarter of a century, aided by this lovely lady. And Claire has a few words she wants to share about this weekend, especially with all the pressure and the warnings about potential false flags.
Yeah, okay. If you have the opportunity and you're going to the Super Bowl to see the game, God bless you. But heads up, be aware of what's going on around you. I think that's going to be really important this Sunday.
Well, supposedly there is, very heavy security at the Super Bowl. There is every year, but apparently they've made a lot of changes in the wake of the Las Vegas shooting.
Yeah.
So if you are going, obviously, you don't take a lot of stuff with you because they're not going to be letting people with overly large coolers and backpacks get on in there. If you are going to a Super Bowl party, where there's liquid refreshment.
Liquid sunshine.
Yeah, liquid sunshine.
Yeah.
Something that came out of a copper still somewhere in the backwoods. Exercise the appropriate caution. If you're hosting a party and somebody has had a little too much to drink, take away their car keys, put them on the sofa. We want everybody.
Yeah.
We want everybody to be here on Monday,
Yes.
able to listen to our show, read the website, and continue to do that which we do. Please keep this FISA memo story going. I'm sure the Democrats and the liberals are hoping that between the release being on Friday and the Super Bowl, that by Monday, most Americans, it will have faded in their mind. And that is generally true. But we need to all keep it going strong. So save all of these stories, make yourself a little disc file or a scrapbook, and keep this thing going, because it took a long time between the arrest of the Watergate burglars and the resignation of Richard Nixon. This story is just now beginning, and it's going to take a while to unwind. Strategically, it is in the interest of the GOP and Donald Trump to have this play out over the rest of the year heading into those midterm elections.
Right.
So it's going to be very slow but I cannot stress the importance of what happened today, where the U.S. government has now officially acknowledged that which we here in the independent media had deduced for ourselves all along. So there's the music. Please stay tuned for John Stadmiller's program. Share everything that you learn here with everybody else. Have a really good weekend. Have a safe weekend. We'll be back on Monday. Aloha, America.